data practices and blended learning for social studies. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was really, in order to discuss this, I think we need to define what we mean by data, what we think the purpose of data is, how we gather the data, how we process it, and then look at some examples of blended social studies data. So what do we mean by data? So data in this case is anything that will help us tell how our blended design is working. And the fancy name for the two types I want to discuss is qualitative data and quantitative data. And you see the definitions there. For qualitative data, it describes characteristics, and you get it by questionnaires, interviews, observations, and notes. That's a fancy data, but it does apply to blended social studies. In qualitative data, qualitative numbers, expressing quantity, amount, or range. Now, the purpose of the data is to see how we're doing in our blending so we can make it better, kind of like a design-based approach. Yeah, I could add more fancy wording in here, but that purpose really for blended learning social studies, I think, is sufficient. Notice the Orioles colors. How do we gather data? This is going to be nothing fancier than just a list of data that we can get to reflect on our practice. So, qualitative data. You observe your students, you write down notes, you review their work while they're doing it and after they're done doing it on the online documents. You look at chat history if you're working in an online classroom. Maybe you give surveys, Google surveys. Best prepared in advance, but you can do it on the fly. Polls that are part of an online classroom or any other kind of app that you can use, those can be prepared ahead of time or, again, done on the fly as well. Quantitative data, scale type questions you ask them could be in that same survey. Scores on Google content surveys. Maybe you give a check for understanding at the end of a lesson. And use a rubric to rate student performance on various skills, content, knowledge, investigation, communication, critical thinking, and then rate them and then process the numbers to see how they're doing. How we process the data, several ways you can do it. Collaboratively with other teachers, perhaps on your collaborative team, in consultation with specific administration. Maybe you can make contact with an experienced researcher, but you're looking at both types of data, oftentimes intertwined, qualitative and quantitative. They can be, just like the online and the face-to-face and blended learning can be intertwined. Now, here's going to be just a couple examples of data in social studies. So, quantitative example, informal notes taken on a specific lesson, hotspots of the Cold War, reviewing a specific part of a lesson on the New Deal. You wouldn't have time to review all of it because gathering data can be a chore. And discussion was conducted regarding African Americans in World War II, Tuskegee Airmen, 701st Tank Battalion, 333rd Artillery, using a chat feature. You pull the record and review it based on the investigation of critical thinking. You can use a specific thing to comb through the data. And then quantitative examples, scale type questions, asking questions about organized crime in the 1920s, a Google survey asking about multiple approaches in the civil rights movement, and then students being given a set of primary sources related to the massacre at Wounded Knee. You use a rubric to evaluate their critical thinking and content knowledge on that. These things give you data that you can use to reflect on your social studies learning.